Have you been on a search for answers for months or even years, trying to figure out what's wrong with you? Have you been experiencing mystery symptoms that present like an infection, a disease, or maybe even tissue damage, yet none of the tests that you've had can prove this? Have you ever wondered if what you're experiencing is actually chronic pelvic pain syndrome? Well, if so, then this video is specifically for you. My name is Christian St. John. I spent nearly 3 years and over $50,000 to recover from chronic pelvic pain, so you don't have to. If you'd like access to my free training on how I beat CPPS, be sure to go ahead and grab that down below. In this video, I'm going to share the 8 warning signs of CPPS. These are the same warning signs that I was able to uncover along my healing journey. And these are the exact same warning signs that you too must be aware of if you plan to beat CPPS. And if you stick with me until the end of this video, I'm going to share with you why so many men and women either miss or dismiss these warning signs, ultimately extending their suffering, as well as exactly what you can do to make sure that this does not happen to you. So let's jump in. I knew that I just couldn't give up on it. Completely healed, completely changed, totally transformed, back at the gym, lifting weights, working out. Most importantly, I'm just living a normal life. You have to believe you can heal. Warning sign number 1. The pain comes and goes. You know, even though I suffered with chronic pelvic pain for nearly 3 years, and even though my pain was excruciating, it never was 24/7 unrelenting pain. Now, don't get me wrong, the pain that I had was absolutely horrific. Some of the symptoms that I had, whether it was pain with sitting, knife pain inside my urethra, like a stabbing pain or burning pain, electric shock style pain inside my urethra, and on and on and on. Some of these symptoms were so bad for so long. The only way I can describe it to you is like a prisoner of war style torture pain. So for almost 2 years, my symptoms were an absolute nightmare. However, I don't remember a time when I was unable to sleep without pain. Meaning, even when my symptoms were at their worst, I was still able to get a decent sleep, thankfully. This was such a blessing. I was so grateful for this. And that was something that was very interesting to me, because if I'm suffering so greatly during the day, I'm having all of these pains and all these mystery symptoms, and it's so brutalizing and so horrific, why is it that when the nighttime comes and I'm resting and lying down and relaxed, that the symptoms would subside? Now, it wasn't always a good night's sleep. Sometimes there were medications I needed to take or things that I needed to do in order to get to sleep. But for the most part, my symptoms would go when the nighttime would come. And then as I progressed through my healing, eventually I would have maybe a good hour, and then eventually maybe 2 hours or a good afternoon. And then very rarely, as I began to progress, I would have a good day, where for a good chunk of the day or most of the day I would have no pain, and then the next day would come and the pain would come right back, or maybe it would come in a milder fashion. So it just didn't make sense to me that I had a disease or an infection or something structurally wrong with me if there were moments, albeit brief, but moments in my day where I experienced some relief. Because if you think about it, if you have an injury, if you break your arm, you break your leg, or you have an infection, that tends to worsen over time. That pain will continue to be there, and it doesn't really go away unless you resolve it through a surgery or medication or some sort of medical intervention. So this was a warning sign to me pretty early on that what I was dealing with was unique, and it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. So unlike an infection, which worsens over time, and unlike tissue damage, which follows a predictable healing path, CPPS is unpredictable. One moment it's hurting you and the pain is really bad. The next moment it's not so bad. One day you're suffering greatly, the next day it may disappear. So it's very unpredictable. This type of pattern keeps doctors guessing, and it ultimately keeps you, the patient, on the hamster wheel of searching, looking for certain tests, looking for certain treatments and procedures that might help. So if you're experiencing inconsistent pain, if it's coming and going, this might be a warning sign that you actually have CPPS. Warning sign number 2, the variety of symptoms. You know, I experienced some wild symptoms when I had CPPS, and they were so varied, it's crazy to even think about. In fact, I can't even believe what I went through, and it reminds me of how scared I was to share these symptoms with people, because in my mind I was thinking no one would ever believe me. Like, for instance, the first symptom I remember having was some weird laser beam type feeling down below during intimacy. It was almost like there was the laser shooting down there while I was being intimate. It was very bizarre. And then I experienced at some point like burning sensation in my urethra, which of course I thought was an infection, and it wasn't. And then that burning began to radiate. So there was like a radiating type feeling eventually that would pulse through my penis and through my urethra. And then it progressed into like a knife pain, literally somebody stabbing me with the knife inside my penis, inside my urethra, my perineum. So just torturous. And then it began to expand out and radiate more into instant pain with sitting, electric style shock pain in my hamstrings and my legs and my perineum. In fact, I had so many symptoms, I have to think back to what they were because I often forget some of the symptoms that I had. Let's see, what else did I have? This one was like probably the worst ever and the most terrifying. It was like a clawing sensation, almost like there was a critter with long claws gripping inside of me in my urethra trying to get out. You can't even make this stuff up. And if you're going through this, you know exactly what I mean. It's just bizarre and terrifying, and you don't want to tell anyone because you think you're going crazy. You don't want them to think you're crazy. And it's just wild. Like, it would make a great movie, it would, but it would be a horror movie for sure. Let's see, what other symptoms did I have? Pain with urination, burning with urination, burning after urination, where it would never go away. It would feel like I needed to constantly urinate even though there was nothing there, and the burning would persist. Like weak urination, where the stream wasn't strong anymore. It was just like drip, 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 like a dribble. Erectile dysfunction, pain with sex, pain after sex, burning after sex, weak ejaculations, and on and on and on. A pulling sensation, a tightness. I never had anything in the rectum. Thankfully, that's the one thing I didn't have, but that's a very common symptom. Some men and women will experience rectal pain or tightness in the rectum, or like a golf ball style feeling. Let's see, what else did I have? Sharp pains. Man, we can go on and on. I think I probably listed about a dozen. If any others come up, I'll surely let you know. But this was an indicator to me that this is something very different. The variety of symptoms was unlike anything I'd ever experienced and made it very difficult to combat. So you have to understand that CPPS, Chronic Pelvic Pain Syndrome, presents a multitude of symptoms. This is what makes it so hard for doctors to actually pinpoint what you have, and this is why oftentimes you go misdiagnosed with things like prostatitis, or if you're female, a urinary tract infection, or perhaps bladder issues, or neurological diagnoses, or they might even say that it's all in your head. This is one of the reasons why. So if you're experiencing a wide variety of symptoms, this could be a warning that what you actually have is CPPS. Warning sign number 3, your pain tends to move around or radiate. One of the worst symptoms, as I just described, was that burning sensation that I had in my urethra. What was interesting about this was it wouldn't just stay in one place. The burning would actually radiate. So I could feel the burning expanding, almost as if you close your eyes and pictured like you're on fire. There's actual burning happening inside of you, and that fire just continues to expand and get bigger and become more pronounced and grow inside of you. That's what it felt like. And it would move around. For me, it was usually on the right side of my urethra, but it would move within that channel on the right side, and it would become bigger and stronger and more intense and more painful, and then sometimes it would subside and become less intense and less painful, and then sometimes it would become bigger and stronger and more painful again, radiating out. That was a very scary symptom for me. So you have to understand that pain that tends to move locations or radiate is very common with CPPS, and we hear this quite often with our clients. We hear things like, well, yesterday it was in my perineum, and today it's moving a little bit in the urethra. We have another client who has rectal pain, and sometimes it's like a discomfort, golf ball type feeling, and other times it's like a low level burning in the rectal area. So pain that tends to radiate or move around within a certain location is a telltale sign of CPPS. The reason why pain from CPPS tends to move around or radiate is because it's more derived from muscle tension or nervous system dysregulation. It's not an infection. So that's the reason why this is happening. I didn't know that at the time, but if you're going through that right now and you're having radiating pain or pain that moves, it's a telltale sign that it's CPPS. And what happens is this movement of pain and this radiating of pain tends to keep doctors confused and keeps patients confused and only keeps you on that doctor hamster wheel. You wind up taking all of these medications and seeking out all of these treatments, and they just start throwing painkillers at you or nerve medications because they're really not sure what's going on. So if you're experiencing pain that's radiating out or pain that's moving within a certain location or certain area, this could be a warning sign that what you have is actually CPPS. Warning sign number 4. You have very specific pain patterns. So for me, here were some of my pain patterns. I was able to get a good sleep most of the time, as I shared with you. Then I would wake up, and as soon as I would wake up and start moving around, the pain would begin. That was a pattern that was pretty consistent early on. I wake up, I'm hopeful that maybe today something will be different, and then bam, I'm hit with that pain again. And that would happen over and over and over again. Then deeper into my experience, my pain pattern would look something like this. I would wake up, I would actually have a good morning, I would start to feel excited, I would start to be hopeful that maybe today could be a day without pain. Then the afternoon would come and whammo, I would be hit with pelvic pain. And that happened over and over again. Good morning, bad afternoon. Great morning, bad afternoon. And it was very depressing because you're riding this high, you're feeling great, maybe you're moving around, and then the afternoon comes and that pain begins. So that was a pattern that was with me for a while as well. And I remember I would try to move through the pain, I would try to exercise through the pain, I would try to walk through the pain, and that just made things worse. So I started to associate walking with pain. I started to associate exercising with pain. I started to associate sitting with pain. And then it was almost like my brain was predicting this pain that would happen. Even just thinking of sitting, thinking of walking, thinking of biking or exercising would start to generate pain in my pelvic region. So as time went on and as this pain became worse and worse for me, it began to be wired into my nervous system, and the pain just started to grow and grow and grow, and I became more fearful, of course. So many people that we work with notice these pain patterns as well. It may not be exactly how I had it. Sometimes it's the reverse. I've spoken with many people who say the nighttime is the worst for them and the day is actually not too bad. But when the night comes, then the pain just really ramps up and they're unable to sleep. If that's you, I really feel for you. My heart goes out to you because that's the ultimate torture, not being able to sleep at night. For others, it's pain with sitting or pain with sex or some sort of a pattern that they have, whether it's a time of day or a specific activity that tends to trigger that pain. So if your pain comes and goes during certain times like this, and if certain patterns are emerging like that for you, this is a warning sign that what you actually have is CPPS. Warning sign number 5, your pain intensifies through periods of stress or anxiety. You know, when I was suffering with chronic pelvic pain, it was a very stressful time. We were in the throes of the global pandemic, which of course was very stressful, and I had a very stressful work environment. It was to the point where every day there seemed to be a situation that would come up which would create enormous stress within the company. And that would be absorbed into me. And I started to realize as the months and years went on that whenever these stressful situations would arise, my pelvic pain would actually increase. Sometimes it wouldn't happen instantly. It could be hours later, or sometimes the residual effects could be the next day after me just absorbing all of that stress and absorbing all of that anxiety. So I really started to connect the stress from the workplace, the stress from the pandemic, life-related stress, and everything I was dealing with to my chronic pelvic pain, and I recognized there was a direct link there. So you have to understand that CPPS is not just physical. There's a direct link between your emotions, your anxiety, your stress, your psychological well-being, your social environment, and chronic pelvic pain. All of these factors can create muscle tension in the body. That tension could put pressure on nerves and start irritating nerves and start creating pelvic pain for you that's very uncomfortable. So if you find that during periods of stress or anxiety or during periods of intense emotions that your pain tends to intensify, this is a telltale sign and a great warning that what you have is actually CPPS. Warning sign number 6, your pain becomes worse with certain foods or beverages. You know, one of the cruelest things about CPPS is that when you try to relieve yourself of pain with some of the comforts of life or the simple pleasures of life, sometimes it can make the situation worse. In my case, I've never been a big drinker, but I do occasionally enjoy a nice cocktail or two or a beer or two. I would classify myself as a social drinker. I can take it or leave it, but it's usually under control and I never really abuse alcohol. So when I was suffering with CPPS during the summers, occasionally I would be invited to a barbecue or a family event, and you just want to let loose, right? You want to relax, and it's a very natural thing. It's a very American thing just to have a beer at a barbecue or to have a cold beer during the summer, or even at night, no matter where you live, just having a glass of wine to relax or to chill out. And these were things that would actually make my pain worse. I remember specifically at a family event where I was just so tense and under so much pressure and having so much pain. I was really just happy to be with family and really just craving that connection and looking to unwind, that I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna have a beer and let's just relax and let's just enjoy this day and try to be grateful for this day and not focus on pain. So I went and I had that beer with family, and what do you know, about a half an hour later, the burning sensation just intensified. It was so bad. It was through the roof. It was really a cruel situation because now I felt like I couldn't even enjoy these simple pleasures. So for some people, it could be a beer. Some people, it could be wine. A lot of people have trouble with coffee and caffeine. That tends to really flare people up. I also enjoy a good cup of coffee every day. It's one of my simple pleasures, and there's a certain way that I like to make my coffee, as perhaps you do as well. And there's a certain way that I like to enjoy it in a certain mug. Yeah, I'm one of those guys. But after a while, I had to give up coffee and I had to even give up caffeine. I came off of it for 6 months just because the side effects of the caffeine were exacerbating my CPPS and my chronic pelvic pain. So for some people, it's coffee. For other people, it's alcohol. For some people, it might be particular foods, spicy foods, fried foods. And what this is telling you is that it's an inflammatory response. The foods, the spice, the alcohol, the acid buildup in your system is an inflammatory response more than leaning towards an infection or some sort of disease that you may think that you have. So if you're experiencing increased levels of pain after alcohol, after caffeine, teas, coffees, sodas, spicy foods, sugary foods, fried foods, inflammatory foods, whatever it may be, this is a sign that it's more of an inflammatory response and a nervous system response. This could be a major warning sign that what you're dealing with is actually CPPS. Warning sign number 7, all of your medical tests come back normal. You know, I specifically remember a time, probably about 2 years into my suffering, where I had a stack of medical tests and exams in front of me. And I would put them in folders. I'm a little old school, so I'd have the folder, the printout. Yes, I like to use printers. Then I would have the CDs, like the disc that they provide if it's an MRI or a CT scan or whatever it was. And I would have it essentially on my desk, and I would flip through every single test. Negative, 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 whether it was an x-ray, test from the urologist, CT scans, MRIs, MRN, you name it, I had it, right? There was probably about a dozen of them. And there was this one time where I was just looking through the stack and I'm searching, like, what is wrong with me? I just remember thinking, this is so ridiculous. I have this stack of tests. It shows that there's nothing wrong with me, yet I've had all of these different diagnoses. I've had the prostatitis, I've had the pudendal neuralgia, now it's non-bacterial prostatitis, now maybe it's CPPS. I'm like, this is just such BS, and I'm tired of it. So it really stinks to have to go through that, and suffering, of course, is not fun, but it was a turning point for me once I was able to realize, look, there's nothing physically wrong with me, this is all nonsense. Then I was able to begin on my path to healing. So if you're someone that's been through a variety of tests and it's been at least 3 to 6 months and you have no known proven diagnosis, no infection, no disease, no proven structural disorder, this is a classic warning sign that what you have might actually be CPPS. Warning sign number 8. You've tried anti-inflammatories and antibiotics with no success. So the interesting thing is, as I was going through my recovery journey, of course, I was prescribed many different types of medications, all the way from the low-level anti-inflammatories that you can get over the counter, all the way to some pretty heavy painkillers and things that could be quite dangerous, and everything in between. So it was interesting to me that anti-inflammatories didn't work. Now, if you think about anti-inflammatories, they're designed to give you relief from soreness, achiness, tissues, joints, right? An over-the-counter NSAID. That's what it's designed to do, and it's usually pretty effective if you have tissue inflammation or soreness through exercise. So if anti-inflammatories aren't working for you, this should be a clue that perhaps you're not dealing with damaged tissue or actual sore tissue. The other interesting thing was that these antibiotics that were prescribed to me and many of our clients didn't work either. Antibiotics are designed to rid your system of any infections, any bacterial infections, if they're looking for urinary tract infection or like an STD or some sort of prostatitis or any of the other symptoms that you're usually labeled with. The doctor is typically going to prescribe some antibiotics. So if the antibiotics aren't working, that's another sign that we're really dealing with a different animal here. And that's also a good clue for you that you probably don't have an infection or a bacterial infection at least, which is great news. So none of those medications worked for me. I did a little bit of experimenting with some CBD products and some marijuana products, and I had some relief here or there. It was hit or miss, but I would get some occasional relief. And that was very interesting to me because it works on a different pain pathway than anti-inflammatories do and than antibiotics do or painkillers do. So that was a signal to me that what I was dealing with was very unique and more nervous system related. Now, it's important for me to share, as I have before and as you see in these videos, that this is not medical advice. I'm not advising you to take any specific medication. Please be sure to consult with a licensed medical professional before trying any medications or any drugs or any procedures or any treatments, because there can be some really adverse effects to not just over-the-counter medications, but of course to CBD and THC and marijuana-related products. You have to be very careful, especially if you do overdose it. So if you're someone who is not getting any relief from antibiotics or anti-inflammatories, this is a classic warning sign that you may have CPPS. So now that we've covered the 8 warning signs of CPPS, I want to share the 3 main reasons why people either miss these warning signs or choose to ignore them. Reason number 1. Most people assume that an infection must be the cause. This is a result of our medical community conditioning us that any types of symptoms that might be a burning or radiating type of pain must be an infection. This is because over the decades, our medical system is used to treating patients in one specific way, especially when you get into the different specialties of medicine, such as urology. They're almost like hammers looking for nails. They're just so used to throwing antibiotics at patients that when those treatments don't work, they really don't know what to do because they're not communicating with other medical professionals to really understand the challenges of a condition like CPPS. And they're not really understanding that CPPS can present many symptoms that are similar to the symptoms that they might come across, but they need to be treated in a completely different way. Reason number 2, most people are focused purely on the physical components of chronic pelvic pain syndrome. This is totally natural as well. We've been conditioned since we were young children that all pain is physical. And don't get me wrong, pain is very physical. We can feel that physically through all the symptoms that I just described in this video and the symptoms that you're probably experiencing. The problem is most people don't understand that all pain is actually generated in the brain. That's right, pain is brain generated, and the brain sends signals through the spinal column, through the spinal cord, through the nerves of the body to the areas of the pelvic floor that you're actually experiencing these symptoms in. Now, because most people don't understand this, they go on a wild goose chase looking for physical solutions to a problem that they believe is just purely physical. This oftentimes leaves people just focusing purely on organs such as the prostate, organs such as the bladder, or certain parts of the body like a specific nerve, such as the pudendal nerve in pudendal neuralgia, as an example, and they get stuck going down these rabbit holes, again, because the focus is so narrow and they're just narrowly focused on the physical. So when in doubt, it's always good to zoom out and to understand that CPPS is not just physical. And even once people begin to realize that partly their issue might have to do with some pelvic floor disorder or tension in the muscles of the pelvic floor, they're still too narrowly focused on the physical aspects of the pelvic region. And then they just focus on doing physical therapy as the only method to correct these symptoms. And although physical therapy is helpful, it's just a small piece of the puzzle. It's not the complete picture. So what's interesting about the clients that we work with at Pelvic Heal is when they start working with us, they have a strong belief that the pain is physical, and it's really hard for them to believe sometimes that there might be a brain component or a stress component or a psychological component to their pain. But as we begin to work with these clients over a period of weeks and months, they begin to realize more and more how chronic pelvic pain is not just physical. And it's always wonderful to see once they start working through our pain recycling system, what happens is their mind really starts to open up as they begin to understand and realize the different components of chronic pelvic pain and everything that's actually contributing to their symptoms. And as their mind starts to open up and they begin to educate themselves and work through the pain recycling system, they start to experience reduced symptoms, better results, and then more confidence moving forward. Reason number 3, it's just easier for people to ignore the warning signs instead of facing the music and doing the hard work. This is probably the harshest reason, which is why I left it for last, but it needs to be said. Let's face it, humans are designed to seek out comfort and look for the path of least resistance. It's just always easier to seek out the magic pill, the silver bullet, that special treatment, that special procedure or surgery, or unique type of whatever that's happening halfway across the world that's going to solve your chronic pelvic pain. And look, I'm no different than you. I was the same way. I spent nearly 3 years and over $50,000 on treatments and procedures and surgeries and supplements and all sorts of nonsense that didn't work. So I would say that that was actually to my benefit because I was willing to do whatever it took to get out of chronic pelvic pain. But I don't want you to have to do that exact same thing. I want you to not have to spend all the time and not have to spend all the money that I did. That's why I started this channel. And that's why I started Pelvic Heal, because the reality is most people are unwilling to look under the hood to really get at the root causes of what's going on with their chronic pelvic pain. And the best way to resolve chronic pelvic pain is by taking a holistic approach, a biopsychosocial approach. This is the exact approach that we take at Pelvic Heal through our pain recycling system with our clients. You have to understand that since pelvic pain is not just physical, it's not just biological, you're not going to be able to solve it in a physical manner. And I'm not here to try to make you feel good, I'm here to tell you the truth. And the truth is, beating chronic pelvic pain is not easy. It takes a lot of work, it could take a lot of time. Now, you can do it on your own, don't get me wrong. But it could take months, if not years, or even a decade to figure it out on your own. So the whole point of Pelvic Heal, our accountability coaching program, is to compress that suffering. We want to help people that otherwise would have to take years to compress that suffering down to just months. And we want to help teach them the skills and help them to implement the skills that are necessary to reclaim their lives in months instead of years. So after going through all these warning signs, if you're starting to believe that what you have is actually CPPS, understand that this could be a major turning point for you, just like it was for me. Also understand that you can do this. You can get out from chronic pelvic pain. It's not going to be easy. If anyone tells you that it's easy, they're lying to you. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of time, but you can do it. I'm a testament to that. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please be sure to let us know which warning signs resonate the most for you. And if you'd like to learn more about my story and exactly everything that I did to free myself from CPPS, be sure to go ahead and click on this next video appearing right here on your screen.